Hello and welcome back. I'm your host Bilal Ahmed, and today you're going to learn typecasting in C#. Our objective for today is implicit typecasting, explicit typecasting, and to understand some differences between convert.toInteger class and integer.parse. The basic definition of conversion or typecasting is when we convert one data type to another data type. That means that when we jump from one data type to another data type, and we do this plenty of time when it comes to development, and we have two types of type conversions in C#. The one is implicit and the other is explicit. And as you can see, the implicit conversion means these conversions are performed by C# in a type safe manner. These are the implicit conversions. We don't need to do any special work or any special coding for this. But when it comes to explicit type conversion, we need to do this explicitly, right? And there are some differences, so let's get to the code to understand it more. To explain typecasting in detail, I would like to take an example of boxing. Let's consider we have two boxes here with the different sizes. The one is like a size of 2. Let's consider this is the size of 2 of 2, and the other is with the size of 3 by 4. And we have, as I said, we have two types of conversions. One is implicit and the other is explicit. Now let's consider that we have a requirement to put this box inside of this one, to put this box inside this one, and relatively that's an easy job because we can easily put 2 by 2 into 3 by 4 box. So here we call it implicit type conversion because we don't need to do any special work. But when it comes to put this 3 by 4 box inside a 2 by 2 box, then we need some special work, some special coding, and here the time that we need to agree with the system that only put this amount of data into this data type and the other data will get erased. This area will get erased, or we will lose this data from this area. So we can put only that amount of data into 2 by 2 size, right? And this is an example when we jump from a smaller data type to a larger data type, we call it implicit. And when we jump from a larger data type to a smaller data type, then we call it explicit type conversion. Right? So let's understand the same by the coding. I have a project here with the name typecasting, and let's consider I have an object of byte. That's in byte object, and its data is somehow 35. And I have another object, integer object, and integer object is equals to nothing, but we can set integer obj is equals to byte object. When I print both integer object, I'm doing a basic concatenation here, just combining two words together, and byte object, right? And let me see a quick output. Yes, as you can see, we have the same output from both objects. And what we have done here, we have a smaller box of size 2 by 2, and we put that box inside of integer object, which is larger data type. Right? So we can easily do this by putting a smaller boxes inside a larger boxes, right? But when it comes to the opposite, or when we have, let's consider we have an object of type integer which have value somehow 35, and we have another object of byte object, integer object. Now we cannot do this. We have an error here. We have a red mark here, and what this red mark says that cannot implicitly convert type integer to byte. An explicit conversion exists. An explicit conversion exists, and this is the point where we need to do some special kind of work, and this is to use the convert class. Convert with .2byte function and pass the argument or pass the value to this function, right? And here we are done here. Let me just run this again, and we have the same output, but this time we have put the 3x4 box inside 2 box with this special code, with this convert class. Don't worry, I will explain you the classes and the function in detail in our later exercise, but for now they are the same. And now we have covered implicit and explicit typecasting, and most of the students, whenever I teach typecasting, they always ask the way we are going to use this. So let me just tell you that typecastings are the most important topic, or the most important part of any programming language, whether it's web programming, whether it's database programming, whether it's Java, C#, or anything. We are doing typecasting or jumping from one data type to another data type a lot. And let's consider you have in .NET we have input, please, input value. Whenever we get an input from users, it's usually in the string format. So string value is equals to console.read line, and this is the way we read values from the users. And let's consider we have another input, please, another input value, and I'm going to save this in string value 2 and the same code, console.read line. Now we have two values, but we can, and we have a requirement to add these both values, and this is value 1 and value 2. So let me just give you a quick overview. Let's consider we have our first value that is 55 and the other value this is 65, and what we have in output is 55 and 65, both are concatenated and both are not together. So there's this example that we have an input from the user, and this input is stored in integer format, and we cannot perform any mathematical operations on integer. So we need to convert this value 1 and value 2 to some mathematical or integral values, to some floating or integral value, and integral value is integer, and that is integer value, which is equals to convert dot to integer 32 and pass this value here. And I'm doing this because strings are larger in size from integers. Convert dot to integer 32, and here we have value 2. And now let me just give them a quick example, integer value, right? Okay, now let's consider the same input again, 55 and 65, and now this time we have an input of 120. So this is an example of type conversion. We do this a lot. We do this almost in every program, almost in every program where we have input from the users or input from other sources. We need to convert this into our desired data type to perform our desired operations, Right, so now I hope the typecasting is clear to you. So let's now consider a difference between convert class and integer.parse. The basic difference, or the only difference between these objects is, let's suppose we have an string value here. This is a value which is equals to null, and I want to store this value into integer object, which is integer object, and I'm doing this by integer.parse and value. Right, and the output is exception. Value cannot be null, because integer.parse cannot handle null values. Whenever we have an input, whenever we have a value null, integer.parse will throw an exception and our program will get crashed. And now this time let's consider to use an example of convert dot to integer, and we have value here. Yes, convert dot to integer can handle values. It will print 0 instead of throwing an error, right? So the only difference between these two classes is convert can handle null values and integer dot parse cannot handle null values. It will throw an exception. And that's it for today's, and hope to see you in next session. Thank you for watching.